Every day I wake up and I feel so alive. I think to myself.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cheeky Cauldron Podcast, where no topic is too spicy for the pot. I'm your girl, Tamika, and I'm here with my friends and co-host, Anya Williams and Mai Cherie. In case you missed it, last week we got to chop it up with Denise Washington, Austin's only Black midwife, and she has her company Delivering Unto You. She was here. If you missed it, y'all need to go and check it out. All right? Well, today we are going to be wrapping up the month of May with the Divine Mother and today's topic, woman, portal to the universe. And we have a super cheeky guest. She's online with us coming from LA. We have Sufi Ertur. She is a spiritual birth worker, a medium, and most of all, a baby whisperer. Ladies, help me welcome Sufi.
Hi,
Sufi.
Welcome, Sufi.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for being here.
And we know how busy you are, so this is very special. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled. This will be fun.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, just hold tight, because right now we're going to talk about some cheeky eats, y'all. This month we were tapping into the divine feminine. We're talking about healthy wombs, and I want to continue that with healthy bodies. We went to a beautiful spot at 440 West 2nd Street here in Austin, Texas. It's called The Well. And they take a bold approach to healthy eating. They blend clean ingredients, sustainable local farming, and authentic flavors to give you a culinary experience that defines eating well. Pun intended. They proudly offer a menu free of gluten, soy, dairy, seed oils, refined sugars, and GMOs. And that is all courtesy of the dynamic culinary duo, Chef John O. and nutrition consultant Liv Langdon. Bryce, can you roll that beautiful bean footage for us? It was beautiful.
It really was. And it was nice that it felt high end and so healthy. That was my favorite.
I've had a lot of avocado breads, and that one was to die for.
They try to use organic.
Yes. And those were mushroom and butter squash tacos. They were so good.
That was the salmon. Oh, it was cooked perfectly. And it's sustainable.
Look at them peppers on that Brussels sprout.
They were good.
Mm-mm.
I did not like mine.
You liked
Wasn't good. Didn't have any flavor.
Right, but you did like what they put it on, right? Or no, you didn't like it at all?
I wasn't really crazy about it.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought that it was a pretty good place. It wasn't my favorite out of all the places we went to.
I liked it because I can't eat gluten right now. So I liked that no matter what I ordered, I didn't have to think about things. I could be like, well, I'll just eat this.
Because you wanted that dessert, girl. And I'm not a big apple strudel or pie fan. It was okay.
I thought that was
I think
good.
I like the restaurant the most.
Yes.
I was
No,
very happy.
I love the food, and I love what they're doing because I'm on the healthy vegan kind of kick, so it was good. If y'all are here in Austin, go check it out.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
And tell us what you think.
Yeah, we like to know. Drop it in the comments. So in 2021, Dave Chappelle, and y'all know I love me some comedians, and he's one of my top favorites. He's the GOAT. In 2021, he got in trouble for his special, The Closer, because he said something. He quoted J.K. Rowling, who really got canceled because of what she said. And do y'all know what she said? That gender is a fact, and that every person in this world comes through the legs of a woman, which, is basically true. But to me, the most important thing was what she said. Every person who enters this realm comes through a woman, through her womb, which and I know y'all do too, consider a portal. So during my research, I came upon a website, Sacred Mysteries Worldwide, and there was this beautiful quote on there. It said, "The womb is the source of creation. It is the black void where all manifestation of life, physical and spiritual, emerges. It is the sum total of all possibilities, all potential. It is fertility and abundance. The womb is a portal. It is sacred and powerful and the seat of creativity. All existence is birth through the womb.
I love
That is
that. I
beautiful.
love
Yes,
that.
that is so beautiful.
Mhm.
So 34 years ago, my son came through my portal. And I feel like we have lived several lives together. Mother and son, it's more like old friends. And he always would say to me, Mom, I'm so glad you chose me. And I would always say, I'm glad you chose me. But I don't think it's us. Yes, we house them, we bring them through, we create this life. But I think it is the babies on the other side are the ones doing the choosing. And that brings me to our guest, Sufi. So, Sufi, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello. Yes, yes. So, I'm a spiritual birth worker, like I'll explain that later. Um, you know, Coming into the birth world, I was influenced in part by my father's work. And I am just honored to be in it. Been a doula for 23 years. And that's shifting in definition for me. And yeah, I have a son who's amazing. I loved hearing about your son. And yep, just want to get the message out about the other side of birth and postpartum, the parts we don't talk about.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you mentioned your father, and he used to set up midwifery clinics for the UN.
Yes.
And y'all traveled all around the world. Did this influence? Well, you already said it did because your dad. How much did that affect you?
I didn't know it at the time. At the time, I was like, I'm not getting married. I'm not having kids. I'm going to be free. I'm going to do whatever, or that's my dad's work. And then, we had a dinner party. I met my husband. I was in love. We were at a friend's dinner party. They just adopted a baby. And then I met this extraordinary woman. And I said, "Oh, are you the nanny?" She goes, "No, I'm the doula." And I said, "What's that?" This is 23 years ago. And she said, "Oh, this is what I do. I go to births, I support women postpartum." And I just was blown away. I was in my 30s, and I think, I was starting to hear my son's spirit baby voice. And a week later, I joined training, and that was it. I was hooked. And people said, "Oh, you're gonna have lots of kids now." I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna get married. I'm not gonna have kids." But the journey was fantastic and exciting. And I could see how being at the midwifery clinics, being with my dad in these different countries, seeing these women in these very powerful situations, sometimes limiting, it did influence me. And, the United Nations calls them traditional birth attendants. The calls doulas traditional birth attendants.
Mm.
They, meaning for it.
I'm sorry. I just, if you could give me a little bit more clarity, because I find this so fascinating. So your father would travel around the world. He worked for the UN, for the United Nations?
Yeah. UNFPA, their population
Ah,
aspect.
okay. And then
So
I'm sorry, go on.
so I'll give you an example. So in Nepal, we drove across Nepal for 7 days, and my dad was putting up condom boxes in each village and giving lectures about sex education.
Okay. And then how close were you, like how did you work with him? Like did you just see him or did he come home and talk about it or were you
No, I
there?
was traveling with him. I was there. I
Wow.
was there.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
had a
wasn't
huge impact on you.
doing. Yeah, I wasn't working for him, but I was there. Even in college, coming home in Vietnam, he was working with midwives very closely to open a specific clinic in Hanoi. And I just was an observer.
Mm.
What an
Yeah.
amazing way to grow up. I think that
I
is really
know.
fascinating. That alone is its own story. But anyway, go on.
Well, that was my next thing because you, like some of your traveling you did, you say you learned to meditate at the Kopan Monastery in Nepal, and you learned to, oh man, you learned to listen with other ears from the Bantu in Africa, and you learned to see beyond your eyes from the Dinka in the Sudan, which I find totally amazing. So, how have your spiritual explorations influenced your understanding of the woman and the womb as a portal?
Well, going to living in Malawi, living in the Sudan, um, you're just exposed. And one of the most magical moments, and the Dinka is a very Western word for them. It's like, and the Dinka also don't believe that they have a boundary, that they have a big family, and that would include in part the Maasai. But the true name for the Dinka, or they call them the Jing, but they actually read the environment. They read nature. They're the way they bless a woman's womb postpartum with the dokan, it's called. They do a smoke ceremony. All these things just to see them and experience them. But the most magical was, as happened a lot in Khartoum, we got lost in the desert. It was getting dark. And we came upon a wedding party. All we saw we saw a huge bonfire and headlights are turning in. And all the Jang were jumping, and which
Mhm.
is a ritual similar to Maasai. And they welcomed us into this wedding party and they helped us find our way out of the desert. But off and on through our travels, I was exposed to different pieces of culture that felt intimate and secret. Um, and it just, they have a huge vocabulary beyond language of how, and I'm not a expert on their culture. This is just my experience.
Right.
And it was good, but just a beautiful relationship to nature. So if we see some signs and symbols, birds or, things that I hear a lot with spirit baby reading or from moms who feel their children before they're even pregnant, which in our culture seems crazy. In their culture, makes total sense that we are connected to nature and there's a way to have a language and a conversation there.
Yeah, we've discussed in previous episodes about how the way the West is y- the medical model, the way that we are giving birth is like cutting off this natural connection that we have to everything. One thing that you said that really stood out that I thought is amazing is the ceremony for the woman to honor the woman after the birth, postpartum. And here, there people make jokes. Oh,
Mm.
once you have the baby, nobody's going to worry about you. Everybody's going to think about the baby, but it's insane.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you've just had the uh, most spiritual experience you can have. You just literally channeled the soul through your body
Mm.
and manifested it into a human being. And then
Yes.
we're just like, okay, well, rest for a couple weeks.
If even that.
Right?
Mm.
And then get back to it. So,
Yeah, because you're supposed to, like Denise was saying last week, rest for 40 days. Like the woman is supposed to be able to rest and be waited on by family members or friends for 40 days. And that it seems crazy, but that's the way it should be because look what you're bringing into the world. And
right.
it's
So,
amazing.
did you notice that most cultures other than ours would have some sort of ceremony for postpartum, or was it just the Dinkas? Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Korean culture has beautiful Chinese culture. So many cultures honor this process. And it's not just for baby. a woman giving birth, especially for the first time, we call it death of the maiden. And what about just giving? Everybody thinks the 40 days is about taking care of baby and, yes, taking care of mom physically, but there's a whole emotional psychological, psychic transition that a woman goes through when she's had a child that nobody talks about. And women say, "Oh, I must have postpartum depression because I think I'm losing my mind because I'm hearing, seeing, feeling things I've never felt before." And every other tradition gives a woman space and acknowledges this transition as well. In the West, we're thanks to doula work, I call myself a spiritual birth worker, and not to poo-poo doulas at all. Um, I'm just trying to change a little bit of the conversation around that. Um, Postpartum doula work has made headway. I'm lucky. I'm in Los Angeles in some ways. If you give birth here, depending, of course, which hospital or if you have access to support here, quality, interesting support here you might not get elsewhere. But yeah,
Well, I gave
it's
birth twice in Los Angeles. Now, granted,
oh,
the first time was a while. It was 17 years ago. The second time was
oh,
8 years ago. But
mm,
I honestly felt really, really pressured to use the medical model by
mm.
everyone. And people were doing different things, but I felt like it was still very much like, well, if you're going to be smart and really care about your baby, you would do it like this.
Wow.
Oh, I need to correct myself here. Los Angeles, the past 5 years. I've seen so much change. I
Wow.
agree with you. Before 5 years, I've seen it was crazy because I was at Cedars, I was at
Yeah.
St. John's, for a while there. None of us wanted to work at St. John's. It's so much better now. And you know why? They incorporated doulas.
Wow. That's
They
Mhm.
needed to
amazing.
know what we were thinking, and then the competition factor came in. St. John's wanted some of the work that Cedars was getting. Cedars had a beautiful program that incorporated doulas headed by Anna Paula of Beanie Birth, where we were really in conversation with nurses and doctors. And then so St. John's did it as well. And I sat there at St. John's with doctors and nurses asking us, what could we do better? Because they all want that baby friendly award.
Hmm.
So let me say, the last 5 years, I've seen amazing headway after doing this since 2001 and being very frustrated. And bless all the doulas and midwives who've been fighting.
Yeah. No, that's music to my ears. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known about like midwifery and doulas back in, because like I said, my son will be 35 this year, and I didn't know nothing about birthing no babies. I basically just went through it blindsided because I would have probably done things differently. Okay, so you have been a midwife or a spiritual birth worker. I'm going to keep correcting myself on that. For 23 years, you say you learned a lot about this by traveling the world with your dad while he was doing it. But there's this thing that happened to you, this profound incident with what you call a magical birth you attended. How far into your journey did this happen? And please tell us all about the experience.
Sure, sure. So I am an assistant midwife. I never completed my training because what kind of cracked me wide open was midwifery. And I am a birth worker in a doula framework. So I'm not a midwife, but I was an assistant midwife, and I was in the depths in my training with the Hollywood Birth Center in 2003. I was in the depths of my training. We did 40 home water births in 3 months.
Oh,
Oh my God.
So I was tired.
wow.
And we were at a very long birth. And because didn't have my defenses up, because sure, growing up, I would see, hear, feel things that were mystical. But growing up, I have a UN father and a lawyer mother. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a midwife. Um, you know, so at this birth, I was exhausted. And bless our client, been pushing for 3 hours. Nothing was happening. Baby was not doing great. So the midwives called, left the room. The head midwives left the room to call transport. And I'm sitting there and I'm exhausted. And I'm just breathing with the client. And all of a sudden, I felt all this pressure around me. And I could see her grandmother clearly. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay, here it is. What do I do?" But the pressure was so overwhelming. I was like, "Well, I just have to tell her what I'm seeing, and just say what I've gotta say." I asked for permission, always ask permission, people, before you give messages, please, please, please. I asked for permission, and this was also a beautiful lesson for me, this experience about the dance of grief and birth. Grief and labor do a whole dance together. And if you can bring in the grief aspect, talk about it, bring it into the room, labor starts to work better.
Mm.
So I didn't know that then, but I was just like, look, can I please share this? And it was in the time when mediumship started to become popular or more accepted, and there were shows about it. So she was open. And I wasn't calling myself a medium. I was just like, "Look, I gotta have to have this pressure stop." So I said, "Look, this is I have your grandma here. This is what she's wearing." And she keeps saying this over and over again and doing this with her hands like this. And she said, "Your heart and mine always," and kept doing this, which is something her grandmother always did. Our client screamed, stood up in her bathtub, and baby starts crowning. And she's
Mm.
sobbing, and the baby's coming, and the midwife jumps in, bless her heart, and does like a somersault and gets the baby out. Everything's fine. She got her home birth.
Oh, wow.
Now yeah, so I was like, "Well, that's weird. Okay, whatever." Well, I ran into her a year later at a farmer's market, and she said, "Are you a medium now?" And I go, "No, no, I'm studying to be a midwife." And she goes, "No, you really should take that seriously because that my grandmother had died a year before I gave birth, and I was in such grief that she wasn't there, and you gave me a gift, and you need to take this seriously." And I was like, "Whoa, well, this is Los Angeles. Where the heck am I gonna study with somebody?" Because I had read or known that mediums study up to 6 years with someone. You don't study with someone to learn how to do it, you study with someone how to do it, appropriately and to manage your own health and other stuff. So then I had a dream, like, a little while later, I had a dream. I saw this woman, and I had asked my therapist, I'd asked a bunch of people, "Do you know anybody who trains mediums?" Well, I had this dream. I described her to my therapist, and I was like, "You know her. All your people know her. Please, can I get her number?" And my therapist just went white and gave me her phone number, and that was Cheryl. And I trained with her for 6 years in mediumship, all the while I'm doing births. So I'm in at births pushing stage. I'm in postpartum. I've worked with over 800 families. I'm like, the babies are starting to show me images, impressions off the changing table where all change is possible, I say. And so I'm like, what is this? And even my own son and messages I was receiving from him in my own pregnancy and all of that too.
So,
So it's
so
just
you're
like,
saying that the babies were giving you images after they had already passed through the portal. Were you also
oh,
receiving were you also communicating with them before they came at this point, or did that part come later?
later. Now it's science. Now it's science. They're like, there's cognition in the womb. But moms were talking to me about that. Like I was like, I'm just gonna stick in the postpartum area, cognition in the womb, okay. But then when I started to be open to it and had mothers' feedback around it, I was like, oh, okay, at my prenatals, I'm just gonna check in with baby and see what's up, see what I get.
What about before she's pregnant? Do you also do you also do that? Do you like ever meet with people and
Yeah.
communicate with their babies before they're pregnant?
Yes, so there's a great book called Spirit Babies by by Walter McKitchen. Now, spirit babies, you have to be really careful with. I'm very careful with spirit babies because you never ever want to give people false hope. With all the
Mhm.
fertility issues going on, make sure you find someone who's really good and solid. Because a spirit baby reading, for me, the way I do it, is in part it's intuition and in part it's fertility consultation and energetic body reading.
So just real quick,
Um,
that's exactly why I don't like to do it. I tell
Mm.
people you need to go find someone where this is their specialty. Like I can see your spirit babies. I don't know if they're going to come through. Like you can, because the way I see it is just like these lights that are like almost lined up. It's really interesting. That's for my experience. But I don't really feel comfortable. And everyone who wants to know, because they know that I'm a medium. But I'm like, this isn't my specialty. Like so anyway, I'm so happy to know you now, even though you're already so busy. I'll be sending you posts.
Can y'all define for the audience what a spirit baby is?
I'll let Sufi do it.
so before my son was born, I knew I met him, I knew him. And I can't, it's not just me. I have hundreds of thousands of women say to me they felt their children before they were here. And as mediums, if we can connect with a loved one after passing, isn't the soul eternal? So why can't we connect before they come in?
Mhm.
There's also a great book called Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Mace. Highly recommend it. And, um, there are things that come from a spirit baby reading I can't make up, And again, it's never to be I always tell people, look, I'm not going to psychically make a premonition here that you're definitely going to have these children. What I'm doing is this is what I sense. Has this been your experience too? I get names. I just had a reading, that was a pregnancy reading, that was fun. But I get names that the mom's like, "Oh, I've had that name since I was a little girl. I knew I'd name my daughter that." I That's what I'm always looking for in a reading too. I always wanna get something there's no way it's not a generalization. I try to stay away from
Evidentiary.
that.
Hmm.
Getting specifics, getting things that describing the jewelry, describing the blanket grandma's working on, little things like that. The soul wants to communicate.
Mhm.
So, and y'all, you jumped a little ahead, girl, because I know you're getting
I
excited.
am
But
excited.
I want to know, is there a certain time when the soul comes into the body? Because, we're having all of this discussion, um,
Mhm.
political discussions about when is a embryo an actual baby. And so for someone who can, talk to them, is there a certain time when the soul comes into the body?
So, again, this is Sufi's world. This is just what I'm experiencing. I love to hear other people's perspectives on this. I just did an expo and I had the sweetest little one pop behind my booth, very worried that her abortion um, was evil, sinful, that she hurt her baby. And I'm not just trying to make this pretty. In my experience, as I do these readings, and I don't feel this. So it's like this. There's a thread attached to the fetus, and the soul is attached to that thread. And it's like they're in a waiting room with family, and it's a wait and see. Is this a practice fetus? So if you talk about miscarriage, I really see that sometimes it's like the body's practicing. Oh, this is our
Mhm.
practice test before the real pregnancy. Can't tell you how many miscarriages I see. People get pregnant the following year, same time, same date. So many stories like that. So, and it's different for everybody, but I'll give you a ballpark. Until about week 20, which is why I won't do a pregnancy before week 20, I'm not getting anybody like fully there. At birth, I'm not getting them all in. I'm getting them half in energetically. They have the line to the body. Babies, that 40 days in part is also for babies to come into their body. Every baby's different. My son came in with so much of his soul in his body, I think it overwhelmed him. But in the beginning, with miscarriage, abortion, my experience is that it was a physical experience, a physical departure, not someone in there suffering the experience. That's
Mhm.
what I've been feeling and seeing, and I've had other mediums corroborate that. So,
And usually also with miscarriages, that means that there was something going on that was wrong with, the baby or with the body,
mhm. Yep,
so
exactly.
it wasn't meant to happen. And I'm also
Yeah.
thinking about, like, when you're talking about when the spirit comes, well, the heart is the first organ to form within 4 weeks. That's why the first thing you see when you go and get your sonogram is that heartbeat. And so I think that that's another really important thing to, like, think about when it comes to this child or this spirit baby. It's like that heart is already forming, and if it's still if you feel that heartbeat and you see that heartbeat, that baby wants to be here.
Can you can you speak a little bit on this topic in terms of the spirit? Because like when you said that a person will miscarry and then like the same time the following year they'll get pregnant and the baby will go to term. Um, it was explained to me many years ago when I miscarried. It was really difficult that it was my son. Like my son who's here now was the baby that I miscarried twice. So that gave me so much peace and solace. And if you could just speak to that on that to people, because there's so many people who, abortion, miscarriage, whatever, who are really mourning these children that they didn't have. But when I learned like, oh, it was just my stubborn, resilient son who kept coming back, like, nope, I'm gonna come. Um, that actually gave me peace. And I know that's a little bit different than what you were saying, but just that idea that it's the same soul, like if you could just speak on that.
Well, again, I don't pretend to know the universe and all that's in it. Uh, this piece of the soul coming in has many facets. But what I keep seeing sometimes, like your son, very tenacious. Sometimes we have ambivalent souls. Sometimes there are souls who are like, Earth is a rodeo. I'm not sure I want to go there. We have souls who feel their mother's grief that, so you have to be careful here. It's not your fault if you miscarry. You didn't make your miscarriage happen. But souls, some readings they've come through, mommy wanted a girl. And so I just switched gears and I came back as a girl a year later, you know. And then I was talking to mom because mom was feeling guilt about the miscarriage, and I was like, "Look, you didn't make this happen." The souls are working things out, like, they're listening. Also, sometimes our souls, our loved ones who we want to give birth to, they see that, "Oh, there's struggles in the relationship. I wanna give it more time. Dad's not 100% on board." They really want their parents to be 100% on board and healthy, with whatever's going on. Also, there's the sixth stage of extinction. Nobody wants to hear this. But supposedly we're in a sixth cycle. This is science, it's not woo woo world. Sixth cycle of extinction. Just look around. So that affects fertility in all the animals, which we're seeing, and women. So there's a lot.
Can you explain that for our listeners what the sixth cycle of
Yeah,
extinction
that's
is?
interesting.
Sixth cycle of extinction. You'll have to look it up because I'm not a scientist, but just Google sixth cycle of extinction, that we've hit certain stages in how they measure Earth's vitality and what's going on. Yeah,
Well,
I'll just it'll be off
yeah,
by try and
I'll just give a really brief explanation of what it is for everybody. It's basically this concept that the earth preserves itself by not overpopulating, but like there'll be like a surge of population, and then there'll be sort of a weeding out. And that is just a way that the ecosystem is able to stay healthy and flow. And so right now we're in the 6th stage. Yeah.
How many stages are there?
As like Sufi, I am not a scientist, so I'm not sure. I just know like the general idea of what it is, but I'm not.
Okay, well, we're going to try to find some information on that and put a link attached to the video when we do this, so y'all can just click on it and find out what all that is. Because we're still here to talk about the womb, the portal, and babies. And y'all kind of hit it, because that was my next question, was about, women who lose their babies. And we've talked all about that. And you talked a lot about women who have miscarriages, but we talk about women who have abortions. And I have had one. And I think about this child a lot. And we were talking about it one day, that I'll have my granddaughter is 4 now, and possibly that she was that spirit. Her name would have been Mercedes. I call her Mercy for short. And I am kind of one of the caretakers of my granddaughter, because my son, I watch her a lot for him. And I often wonder if she's that spirit who has come back, because I am so embroiled with her life. I'm her caretaker. So what about women who, like, they made this choice? I guess I don't think there's a question, but I just wonder about other women who have gone through this. Do they think about that child as much as I do?
Yes, yes. And again, I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna. I'm not trying to make people feel better. It's just my experience that, the souls are huge. They're not human. In our human life, we can get very linear, and the soul will experience, what I sense is they feel nothing but love and understanding in an abortion situation, and they're not there for it. They're outside of you, supporting. Now, I'm not saying supporting your abortion, they're just outside in support and love. There's no condemnation, there's no anger. I've not gotten a soul yet going, dang, ruin my holiday kind of thing.
I know souls aren't like that. That's why they're so fun to talk to when they're over there. Yeah.
That's a human thing. Now, souls aren't perfect on the other side, but they have a lot of guides. And the guides are going to give them a heads up and be like, this one might not work out. The souls, from my experience, I've done thousands of readings, they just say, like, they don't want to make anything harder for you than it already is here. For us to come to Earth and live here, it's fantastic. I'm so jammed on the rodeo and it's chaos. Yeah, okay, it's crazy, but you have to, everybody's supporting you here. And if you need an abortion for whatever reason, your guides, your family on the other side, all I get is support, and let's try again later.
Well, I never got to try again. So on your website, you say, I never want to hear a mother ask me if her baby knows her. Can you elaborate and take us through the process of connecting with these spirit babies?
So curse John Locke, bless his heart. John Locke. Now, John Locke, scientist, philosopher a long time ago, said, when babies are born, they're tabula rasa. They're blank slates. In a Western medical model forever. And it's not served us at all. So my work, beyond readings or whatever it is I do, is to get people away from babies are blank slates. I laughed when Yale came out with a study that babies show preference at 2 months old. No, they don't. They show preference in the womb.
Yeah.
They show preference the first week they're born. I'll get back to the womb. I had a pregnant mom's baby. I'm in the prenatal say, can you tell her to stop eating onions? And I'm like, who's in their second trimester eating onions? So I asked my client, I go, are you eating onions? She goes, yeah. And her husband, she eats onions like apples.
Oh.
And I go, well, your
Ooh.
baby asked you to stop. And in preference, we see postpartum in the first week. I can show clients, see how your baby turned its head? That's preference. Like, no. So, and so anyway, what made me sad as I was working postpartum, a very enlightened individual, powerhouse, really powerhouse woman, very into spiritual aspects. And I was working postpartum, and it shocked me to my core that she didn't think her baby knew her. And I was like, okay, that's my mission. I've had dads say it too. I'm working with a dad now that is like, my baby doesn't like me. And I'm like, oh, let's address this. And the way I do it is I slow everybody down, gather around the changing table, gather around that baby, and I show them how babies communicate. It's not, yeah, I get telepathy stuff from babies, but babies are showing their parents all the time. I don't like this. I like this. I don't like this. I like this. You just have to slow your own system down, and you have to get away from this idea that it's a blank slate too. No, there's a soul there. Ask any woman who's had more than one kid. How that child was born is kind of who they are. My son, a banshee. He's still a banshee. He's 20.
Well, I was just thinking this Mr. Locke or Dr. Locke could have just talked to a bunch of grandmas who would have said, no, no, son, I'm sorry, but every baby comes in with their personality. Like,
Well, I mean, if we think that we're energy, and when we die, this energy goes back into the universe and then it never dissipates and we come back, you think of reincarnation and things like that. Like, why would we think that these souls that are, whether they've been recycled and they come back or they're new souls that are coming into the world, why would we think they would not know anything or like, that's crazy.
That's what I say. I want to circle back real quick about the abortion piece and just say that feeling you have with your granddaughter, that I really feel, and I start with what you feel first. I think you're right. And I don't think it's something you're making up, and you should take it to heart. And I really feel that, yeah, little ones come through. Some clients are like, "Oh, I was only able to have one child, but I feel a daughter in the wings, but we weren't able to have any more. So what happened to my daughter in the wings?" And I say often they come through as grandchild. So, you bring up a beautiful point. Our grandbabies often are, I believe, the souls that didn't come through us.
yeah, I can't wait to have my grandbabies because I always knew ever since I was little I had 4. I always knew that. And I ended up with 2. And I'm just waiting. I'm like, come on, you two. Can't wait to you guys both grow up. You can each give me one. I don't care how it falls out.
Well, that's a very different way to look at it. And it's almost like a second chance.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say because when she said to you, the soul will be like, "Oh, this isn't right. Let's try again." And you said, "Well, I didn't get a chance." My understanding of what Sufi was saying was, as the soul, let's try again to come through. Not
Oh,
so
yeah, yeah.
much like with you, but like come through so that the soul can have a relationship with you, right?
Yeah.
And you have such a special relationship with Navy. Like, y'all are, mm, it's so special.
It is. Okay. I know y'all was going to have me crying today. All right. So, Suvi, you have served over 800 families, you said, and attended 567 births. And you say birth is not a competition. Can you explain this concept? And is this a pattern that you've actually witnessed?
Thank you so much for asking me this. So why am I
Mm.
calling myself a spiritual birth worker and not a doula? I love doulas. I really do. But I had a mom come up to me at my son's school and say, "Your work divides women." And I was like, "What do you mean my work divides women?" Um, you know, the thing is, as doulas, we're trained to prefer, especially when I was being trained early 2000s, we were trained to prefer natural birth at all cost. Um, and I've just seen it. Any doula who's been to more than 50 births knows what I'm talking about here. I'm not anti-epidural. I'm pro what works for my client. It's not my agenda. It's their agenda. I see an epidural as a tool. And you believe me, I'm in conversation with those anesthesiologists. And I know the new epidural they have, it's crazy. We're doing positions. I have doctors doing things they would have laughed me out of the room 10 years ago. We are doing crazy stuff in the birth room that wasn't allowed even 5 years ago because the change has happened. Sure, is there stuff I don't like? I don't like straight fentanyl. I can't believe they're offering my pregnant clients straight fentanyl.
What?
So as a
What?
oh yeah, mainline fentanyl in the IV to take the edge off their label. I'm like, just go get the epidural. Just do the epidural. You'll have less. If you'd mainline fentanyl after 5 centimeters. Now nobody's doing it after 5 centimeters now because they got the clue. You possibly may have NICU time. So as a doula or spiritual birth worker, I'm just working the field. So baby's not in NICU for any time. Just take the epidural if you need it. It's not the epidural of 10 years ago. I'm not anti-intervention. So here's the competition piece. I'm going to piss a lot of people off because I'm pro what works for that individual. We can't be one size fits all in postpartum. We cannot be one size fits all in birth because you don't know. I've never seen easy birth. I've seen easier births than some. Did people magic? No, it's there's so many pieces that need to be addressed. So my thing with doula work is, sure, if a client's like, I really want a natural delivery, I work towards them making friends with an epidural and a C-section because I'm very Taoist about this. What we resist persists. If you say to me, I don't want it, universe is going to go, hey, every birth, there's a teaching, and it shows up. I had a client say, I don't want a man with a mustache coming in this birth room.
I love that.
I said, there's going to be a man with mustache coming in the birth room. She goes, Sufi, you're so silly. So we're in the pushing stage. We've asked for towels. We're in the pushing stage. I hear the door open. I'm like, here we go. I jump behind the curtain. There's a man with a mustache with a stack of towels.
Crazy.
I love that you do that. It's a spiritual journey for you based on what works for the mom. And I had something that happened to me at 27 weeks because I had a doula and a midwife with my first son. And I went into preterm labor at 27 weeks. And when I called my doula, and she said, immediately go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital and I was 4 centimeters dilated. And I'll never forget, Dr. Love did this exam on me with his big, huge hands. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And he told me that I was going to have the baby in 48 hours, like the baby was coming. And it wasn't a part of my birth plan. And so my midwife and doula came in and they were like, okay, like they gave me a catheter, all of this. And I even talked to my husband at the time and I said, hey, this is not what we wanted to happen. Like, how can we change this? So my midwife and doula came in, and even though I was during Labor Day weekend, was in the hospital, they put cramp bark in my water and I was drinking that. And by the time, I guess in a few hours, that next day, they checked me and my cervix had closed a little bit and they said I could go home, and I went full term. But if they hadn't, even though they said go to the hospital, we also incorporated herbs, and they also kept things super positive. Like, okay, if we might have to have this baby early, or maybe not. So spiritually, they were connected to what was going on with my body. So I just wanted to share that because, you never know what's going to happen, your birth plan or anything. we never know what's going to happen during that time that we're pregnant. So much is going on.
We're always working the angles.
Yeah.
I don't know why
Mhm.
talk to midwives and doulas more. We see birth everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
But Sufi, I'm so sorry. So you're saying that the competition piece is competing with the hospitals? I don't. I'm still a little murky there.
Sorry, I didn't answer the question.
Okay.
The competition piece it makes me so sad because when I started out as a doula, there were maybe 2 doula groups, and it was a sisterhood. And I feel sorry for all these young doulas now and midwives. I can't believe how much division there is now. Competition between midwives and doulas, and just within those,
I
that's the
see.
competition.
Within
So
The community.
within the birthing community, you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I
So, quick
understand.
question before you finish giving us your answer. The woman who came up and said you're causing division between women, was she a part of the community?
Um,
The woman at the
She was a
school.
mom.
She was a mom.
Oh no, the mom. Yes, thank you. The mom said the whole model of the doula, saying that if you don't breastfeed and if you don't have a natural birth, you failed as a mother. That was her interpretation.
Mm.
She, that
Mhm.
doulas only support women who want to birth one way. She said that's very limiting. And that really made me rethink how I work. And to be clear, I'm a birth worker. That means I'll show up at any birth to support what my client wants.
And that
And
clarifies why. I'm sorry, but that clarifies in the beginning why you said these terms are so loaded, right? Like people have these ideas of what these people do and they don't realize it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, tell them when you're a midwife, they think you're crazy. Some people, you know what I mean, or they think you're a rebel. It's so loaded. So for me, I'm a birth worker.
That's perfect.
I write I'm a space holder. I walk in that room. I say hello to the nurse. If I can be of any help, let me know. I know my place, but you better know in those prenatals, I have a whole system worked out where my client is being heard. If she needs something, if I see a resident walk in, I'm grabbing dad's elbow, and dad knows because I've told him next words out of his mouth, may we have the attending, please. So there's things I'm doing in the background, but there's no need to battle in the birth room.
Exactly.
Now, with that said, if there weren't some doulas and midwives who battled, we wouldn't have the progress we do have at St. John's and Cedars. We really do. And I bless those midwives and doulas. They were fighting.
Yes.
I'm here to serve moms and dads and babies in the birth room. So I got to do with what I got.
Okay, so really quick other question before we get this all wrapped up. So you said before you do anything, contacting the spirit world and talking to the mother or even the dad, you ask permission. Is there someone that you've had that didn't really want to know, but that baby was like, no, you tell them this, you say that, and you just had to?
No.
No,
I won't cross that line. Even if a soul said to me, you have got to say this. No, because to give someone a message who's already embodied, to give them a message they're not ready for can be very destructive and emotionally very difficult for them. And so, first of all, I can't remember if I've ever had a soul go, you have to give this message. I can't remember if that has ever happened. They're very respectful of, again, that we are in a body and we are walking this walk. So I haven't had that experience myself. And I wouldn't cross that.
Sufi, I'm so happy to hear you say this because it really bothers me when people just start giving readings. From the beginning, even before I was open and really owning my own mediumship, if I would hear other people just start reading someone at a dinner party, I would think this is so unbelievably inappropriate and rude. Like, you need to stop and ask someone for that very reason. You don't know what this message is about or how it's going to affect this person or if they're ready to receive it. So thank you so much. I completely second that.
And people talk about the Long Island medium,
Mhm.
her show. She gets permission ahead of time. That's a show. Like,
They
no
all do.
good. They all get permission. No good working medium is jumping on people.
Well, I don't know. When I used to live in Chicago, I worked at this steakhouse, and this was before I kind of touched into my spirituality, and probably before I even believed in this stuff. And there was a lady; she would be there, and she'd be at the bar drinking, and she'd just start reading people, and like some of the hostesses, other guests, and people would laugh, and they would, I don't think they took it to heart, but now that I think back on it, I'm like, this lady would just be sitting over there giving out readings.
There are
and
a
stuff.
lot of people who did that. It
Yeah.
happened at a friend's dinner party, and I met him because she was like, I want you guys to meet each other. You're both my people, right? And he sat there. First, he started talking about what the dog was saying. Then he looked at this lady and was like, oh, your husband died. And she was like eating, and he was giving a reading about her husband. And I was like, this guy needs some etiquette training. It wasn't that he didn't know what it wasn't that he wasn't able to do it. I'm like, you can't just start reading people. Yeah. Anyway, it's a little pet peeve of mine.
Well, Sufi, do you have anything that you would like to leave us or our guests with today?
Gosh, just really, I just really recommend just be curious in the birth room about this aspect, because we are so focused on the physical. And I was pregnant once, I get it. Like, in some ways, it just felt safer to focus on the physical. And while I was pregnant, I couldn't even meditate anymore. I was like, oh, I'm too close to the gate. Like, I felt that. But in the birth room, one of my most favorite experiences was a dad who was somewhat skeptical about my work. And I make it a point, like, I'm your birth worker. I'm not your reader in the birth room. If you want a reading later, we can do that, but I'm your birth worker. But during the pushing stage, I felt all his ancestors come in the room. And I didn't say anything. I'm just massaging his wife. And I hear him crying behind me. And he goes, Sufi, what just happened? And I go, oh, you felt that. I go, all your ancestors are here. And he has a very rich lineage. And so look for those moments, especially at birth. We kind of just get too much in our heads in the physical. So look for those magic moments during pregnancy, every day in life. That's what I want to leave you with. That's what I hope people do. Start trying to read the signs and plug in your intuition, and don't just discount it.
And that just gave me
follow the thread.
chills.
Sufi, what an abundant life you have. I'm so happy that you followed your path. This is so
Yeah,
beautiful.
and that you came here to share it with us.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So,
It's
Sufi,
funny that I don't have time introducing myself, because I'm like, I don't know how to introduce myself anymore. Just me.
well, where can people find you? Do you have all the social medias and stuff?
Yes. You can find me at Spiritual Life of Babies on Instagram and Facebook. And my website is joynavigation.com.
All
I
right.
love that website.
Yeah, that's a
Joy
good
Navigation
website
is so
name.
great.
Yeah, right? Joy. Like, hunt
Joy.
your joy.
Thank you so
Love it.
much for being here, Sufi.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right, y'all. Well, this is it for this episode of the Cheeky Cauldron podcast. Listen, if y'all have not subscribed to our podcast yet, what are you doing with your life? Go on YouTube and subscribe, like, comment. We want to hear what your thoughts are, and we want to, be friends with you. Come on, let's talk about all of these juicy topics that we have. Check us out everywhere podcast stream. And yeah, that's it for us this time.
Sufi, thank you.
Thank you, Sufi.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, and thank you for sticking around for the Cheeky Check-In. I'm Ani Williams, licensed psychotherapist and evidentiary medium. I wanted to talk about abortion today. I know this is a very difficult and polarizing topic. I just want to remind everyone that we have to keep the women's health, mental, emotional, and physical health paramount during this conversation. I am not suggesting that one side is right or one side is wrong, but regardless of how women are feeling about it, what they're experiencing, what they're going through, there is a human being involved, and it is an emotional and difficult decision to make. So if we could all just have a little grace with ourselves and one another, and remember that we don't know all of the things that are going on with someone. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Hello, and thank you for sticking around for the Cheeky Check-In. I'm Ani Williams, licensed psychotherapist and evidentiary medium. Today, I wanted to talk about the very emotionally charged topic of abortion. I know that there are people out there with polarizing viewpoints and political ideas about this, but today I want to talk about the women that are involved in it. Please remember that these women are making very difficult decisions. And whether or not you agree with the decision, we are talking about someone's emotional and physical well-being. And if we could just move forward with this topic with a little bit more grace, curiosity, and open-mindedness, and knowing that regardless of how you feel about it, it is important to respect and honor each other as women and as people. So just something to think about. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's my time.